Hello friends, welcome to Java Servlet's tutorial. Here we are dealing with cookies. This is part 3 of the video series, sub-series I mean. So in the last two videos, first we looked at the introduction to cookies. Next we created two HTML files. One is a home page and another one is user preference.html. From home page, you can launch user preference.html. Then from home page, you can also launch two descriptive pages. So those are all servlet. One is about cookies and another one is age of cookies. So in part 2 of this sub-series, we created two HTML pages. One is cookies homepage.html, which contains three links. One links to this user preference and other two links to two servlets that we will create in the next video. So the user preference.html actually submits the user preference to the server, and in the Wildfly server we have a servlet to take care of these user preference values. So if you see, this is our client machine. The client machine first will access the cookies homepage.html. Then server will respond that HTML page to the client machine. Then the client browser will actually see those HTML. That means it will see the hyperlinks. There are three hyperlinks, so user will see that in the client browser. So after that, from there they can navigate to the user preference.html. Then the user preference.html will show you two group of option buttons. From there they can select their preference of font size as well as the background color for the font. So once they make those selection, they will click on set my preference and that request goes to server. So the request is from user preference.html. So let us so this HTML, let us note it as 1. So request comes from the user preference.html. So what happens, server will bypass this user selection control. So using get parameter, it knows what is the user selection. Then it will create the cookies. Then so the server will perform, it creates the cookies. So it creates cookies, then sets the user preferences, then add those cookies to the response object. So after that, it will send the response back to the client. So of course it will have the HTML stating that your user preferences are saved. So some informative message. Along with that, we will send the cookies also. Well, because here we are creating the cookies in the server, then we are adding it to the response object. So once a response goes to the client machine, client knows that there is a request to add cookies. So the response goes from user pref manager servlet. So since this is the response object carries two cookies information. So the response object carries these cookies and it goes to the client machine. So client machine, as part of the response, it knows that there are some HTML to render. It will render those HTML to the browser. Then it knows that there are a request to store cookies. So even though the cookies are created in the server, it will get persisted in the client machine. So in client disk, we will store these two cookies. So these two cookies are stored in client browser. I mean the client disk. So that's all. So this is what we are going to see in this video as a demo. That means we have cookies homepage.html, we have user preference.html. The form submission data goes to user preference manager servlet. The user preference manager servlet will create cookies, then it will add those cookies to response object. So when a response goes to the client browser to render HTML, it also carries the font, the cookies object. Then the client browser, upon receiving the response from the server, it it knows that there are requests for two cookies, so it will store those cookies in the client hard disk. And if you see, these cookies are browser specific. So this is client machine, this is browser. Let's say if it is IE, then the IE browser's responsibility is to store these cookies. So after some point in time, if user uses a different browser, say a Chrome browser, and sets a different preference, then that cookies get stored in a separate location. So ultimately, if you see here, there are two user preferences, and these preferences are specific to the browser. So one preference is for Chrome and another one is for IE, and if the user have some other browser, then those preferences belongs to those specific browsers. Now we will go to Eclipse and start uh, creating this servlet. That means the user preference manager servlet. Alright, now let's open the Eclipse Neon. If you see here, we are making use of the same workspace for the servlet tutorial. From the very beginning, we are using this same workspace. And if you want to take backup, you can take backup after watching, or if you are going through the video and creating your own servlet, then take backup of this workspace. At the end of each video, you can take a backup so that you can restore. Suppose let us say you successfully completed a task in video 3, and when performing some task in video 4, something got collapsed, and so instead of starting it from the scratch, you can just take a backup from the previous video 3 and start working on it. So taking backup is nothing. So this is the path, right? So you can delete this workspace and restore the workspace on the same location, then relaunch the Eclipse. So it will pick up your previous settings or the previous well-known demo. That means let's say video 2 or video 3. Then you can continue the ongoing videos. All right, now let me go to Eclipse. So these two files are from our previous demo. First, let me start the server and I will quickly show what those two HTMLs are. So the Wildfly server is started. Now let us expand web content and I'll show you what is cookies homepage. So this is the cookies home page, and so these two will run a servlet in the server. We will create these two servers, these two servlet in the next video. There we will actually learn the cookies which we create in this video. So user preference, and user preference, if you look here, this is user preference.html, and this also created in the this user preference.html. This HTML file we created in the previous video 2. And if you see here, when you click this submit button, the action takes place in user per. Okay, so that's a spell mistake. User preference manager. Either we can modify it or we can create it in the same name. So let's create a servlet user per manager, and that will take care of setting the user preferences. Now we will create our new servlet. So right click on your web module name, then click new and choose servlet. So package name, you can choose your own version of the package. Here I already have a package, so I'm choosing that package, tube.codingexamples.servlets. Class name, I am giving it as user per manager. So as our form is posting the data, I just want to override only the do post. So the servlet template is ready. So I'm just removing the comments. So if you see, our user preference.html is having two set of radio buttons. One is font size, and the radio group name is font size, and so this one will tell what font size user need, and the second one is back color. So this one will tell what kind of back color user want. All right, now we will get the user selection. Here, if you see, we use the get parameter method of the request to get font size and back color. So now we have user's selection. That means what font size a user he or she want, then what back color is selected by the person. Now, so we have those two settings in string. Now we will create a cookie. So cookie is from javax.servlet.http. So we will import the instance. So once you import this package, the cookie will be available for the current module. Here we create a cookie, and for the cookie we pass two parameters. First one is the name for the cookie and what value we want to store. So the name of the cookie here is font size, and it stores the font size selected by the user. That means it can be either small, medium or large. Same goes for background color, and it can be either red, wheat, or green. So now we have 2 cookies in hand. Next, we set maximum age of the cookie. So here if you see, so the set max age function expects the cookie's age in terms of seconds. So we multiply 60 by 20, that means 20 minutes we want to leave this cookie in the client's disk. So there may be multiple clients, right? So first of all, why server don't want to store these settings in server itself? Why it is requesting the client to store? So that's one question. So then if it lives in client, how long it should live? So that's the second question. So for the first question, so the settings are say in this example, the preference settings is specific to a user and he may use a number of browser. So storing those data in the server is a overhead, and it will be good to store those stuff in the client machine itself. So if there are 1 million client to a web page, then all their preferences are stored in their respective machine itself. So the first question is answered. Second, so when server asks to store the cookie in the client browser, then it should set the age also, so that if client visits a multiple website and all sites are asking to store the cookies, then the client disk will store all those cookies, and those cookies will eat up the client machine's disk space. So that's why we most of the servers will set a age for the cookie. So after some point in time, the cookie will get wiped out from the client disk. So since this is just a demo purpose, we are asking the client browser to store the cookie just for 20 minutes. So after the 20 minutes elapses, the client browser will wipes out those cookies from the client disk. All right. So here our servlet, which is running in the Wildfly, created 2 cookies and it set maximum age of 20 minutes for each cookies. So in the slide you saw that the response object along with the HTML to render carries these cookies also. So the response will carry the cookies. So what we do, we already have cookies, we set the age for these cookies, those informations are packed inside the cookie, then we are giving this cookie to the response object using the addCookie method. Now response object will hold these cookies. Next, as part of the response object itself, the response object is already carrying these 2 cookies. Now we will use the print writer to render something to the client to state that their preferences are stored, but actually it is stored on the client machine itself, but we say that your preferences are stored. We also provide a hyperlink so that from the message they can go back to the cookies homepage. So we will do that now. So the print writer you saw many times. So this is from java.io.package. We get print writer from response object. Then we form a HTML. This is a header tag. And this one is a hyperlink. And if you see, this hyperlink is pointing to our cookies homepage.html. So this is our web module name. And then we specify cookies homepage.html. Let us save this. And we will republish our web module. And you can see the module is undeployed. and it is deployed. So it just removes and re-adds. So now the deployed web module will have this user pref manager servlet equipped with it. So now Wildfly support this servlet. Now we can go to cookies homepage. So these two links are not yet ready, but this one is now ready. It will go to user preference.html. From there we select font size as medium, then back color as green, then we will click on set my pref. So now the request goes to servlet. Servlet will receive the selection. Here the selections are medium and green. Medium and green will be here. Then it creates cookie. Then it attaches those cookie as part of the response object. Then it also pushes some HTML content. When a response goes back to the client browser, the browser will see this message, preferences are set. We remember it for 20 minutes. So that message the client browser will render. After that, it will store those two cookies, which is part of the response object, into the local disk. So that's all. So it says that your preference is set. We remember it for 20 minutes. So now let me click cookies home so that they can go back to cookies home and they can choose about cookies and edge of cookies. And these two servlet will render some informative text with the preference user already set. So since the cookies will stay in the client machine, that means in this machine, whatever you are seeing here, the demo, it stays for 20 minutes only. So the next video I will create after 1 or 2 days. So that time I have to go once again with user preference and select. Then for almost 20 minutes I can make use of these two pages repeatedly, and these two pages will rendered with my user preference. All right, that concludes this part 3 of the demo. That's all here in this video. Thank you for watching. Bye.